Hello again and welcome back to our course on Excel 2013 Advanced. In this section we're going to take a look at connecting to web data, which in Excel 2013 is actually surprisingly straightforward. However, you do need to know how to set it up properly, and it's very important to understand both the strengths and weaknesses of connecting to web data. I'm going to demonstrate this with just one or two examples. So first of all, let's look at a little bit of financial data available via Microsoft. So first of all, I've got a new workbook open here with a blank sheet. I'm going to get external data, and one of the options there is from web. Now when I click on get data from web, what happens is it opens a new web query dialog. Actually, it looks a bit like, in fact it looks very much like an internet browser, and basically that's what it is, but it's an internet browser with a bit of a twist really, as you'll see. It's called New Web Query and it will open at my home page. Now what I'm going to do is to locate some web data, and I can identify the sort of web data that I'm going to be able to import by these little black arrows on yellow backgrounds that you can just see in the corners, top left hand corner there. Now generally speaking, when we're importing web data, we're importing tabular data, and a very large proportion of the data that's available on the web, and certainly the sort of data we're going to be able to import into Excel, will be tabular data. Now sometimes the tabular data is tables of images and so on, and that may actually be what you want, but on this occasion I'm primarily going to be interested in numeric data. So I want to get a stock price, and so what I'm going to do is go to the MSN UK Money page. Down at the bottom of the UK MSN Money page there's a stock quotes link there. And then for the stock quotes I can choose the country, which is for me is going to be UK, and then I've got a choice of market or index. I'm going to stick with all, and then what I'm going to do is to find a particular stock that I'm interested in. I think I'm going to go for AG Bar PLC. That's a pretty convenient one, so select that stock name. And that takes me through to basically a page where I can see the stock price for this particular stock, showing its variation over time, little graphs on the right and so on. And importantly, to the left I've got one of those, what I'll call those yellow arrows. Now in order to select the data that that yellow arrow refers to, if I hover over it first, I can see a border around the area that will be imported, and when I click it changes to a green background and a tick to say that I have selected that particular area. Notice there are other areas I could have selected on the same page. Having selected the one I want, I then click on Import. I then have an Import Data dialog where I can choose whether I want to import to an existing worksheet or a new worksheet. Let's stick with existing worksheet at the moment. Click on OK and watch what happens in cell A1, which is where the import will start. You'll get a message that basically says the import is in progress, but it might be there for only a few moments, so you need to watch carefully. BAG getting data. And there it is, that's the data related that particular stock. Now the important thing about this is that it is a connection and I can update it at any time. So basically in doing this we've achieved two things. First of all, we've got this data into our worksheet, and secondly we've set up a connection that we can control. For instance, we can control how often this connection is refreshed. If I click in that top entry there and click on Properties in the Connections group on the Data tab, I get to the properties. This stock is actually BAG, that's the code for it, and we have a number of options set. For instance, Enable Background Refresh means that if at any stage you refresh this particular connection, you can do other things in Excel while it's happening. You can also set up to do an auto refresh on a certain period of time. Now it's a few minutes since I did this import, so let me set that at quite a small number of minutes. and then maybe we'll see an auto refresh. Let's put it down at say 10 minutes and we'll see what happens. Note the time of the last trade's 15:42, so if there is trading still happening in London, then that will be updated during the time that I'm talking about this connection. And then the other one, which I would normally recommend having set, is refresh data when opening the file. That means that if this workbook is relying on the BAG stock price being up to date, it's a good idea to refresh it whenever you open the file. So let's click on OK and see what happens. See if we get an update. It still says 15:42, never mind. And apart from setting up that 10-minute timer to do a refresh, if you look at the refresh all button here, click on the drop down, you have an option to do a manual refresh at any time or a refresh all. A refresh all will basically refresh any connections that we've got set up in this workbook that are set up to be included in a refresh all. So I've been waiting here to see if this will update of its own accord. It won't, so let's try doing a refresh. It's doing that. You can see the little blue spinning circle there. Of course, there may not have been a trade in London in the time since we did the import anyway. Oh, there we are. A trade was done at 15:53, so that's fine. So as you can see, that type of information not only is very straightforward to import into Excel, but it's very straightforward to set it up so that it's refreshed either manually or on a timed basis. So that's the basics of getting web data into Excel. I'm going to leave you with an exercise to do now. This is a very straightforward exercise really, and one where there isn't really a right answer as such, because each of you may have your own right answer. I just want you to choose something of your own interest, maybe if you're interested in any sport, and I want you to get some kind of table or progress report or something that changes over fairly short periods of time, and put that into an Excel workbook and experiment yourself with refreshing the values or checking that the values get updated every day or every week or whatever, just to demonstrate the sort of thing that I mean. I've got a new workbook here. I'm going into Get External Data. I'm going to the web. I'm going for the English Soccer Premiership, which is still the most popular sport in England. Actually, technically, it's not the most popular sport, because the most popular sport is fishing, believe it or not. But for spectators, it's the most popular sport. And let's go for one of the Premier League tables. Let's try the one on Sky Sports. There we are. I can see the yellow arrow. Click on that, check it's okay, that's the one. Click on import. So it says to me, where do you want it? Existing worksheet is fine. Let's check the properties here. Let's give it a better name. Let's call it Premiership Table. Enable background refresh. Well, yes, we're going to do that because we want to be able to carry on working whenever that's doing a refresh. Let's not do an auto refresh, but let's always refresh it when we open this workbook. Preserve cell formatting, adjust column widths and so on. To a large extent, how much of the formatting comes through from the web page to your workbook varies very much depending on the individual web pages. Quite often you don't get much of the formatting at all, but it does depend very much on a particular situation. That's fine. Let's click on OK. OK again. So the import has started. We get a little progress circle there spinning round, and there it is. You can now see that the table information has been imported. Now, as I said, almost all of the formatting has been lost, but the raw numbers, the ones I actually want, so the positions of the top 20 clubs there in the Premiership table are correct. Manchester United at the top as usual. Number of games played is here. They're coming towards the end of the season. This is only updated roughly once a week. They do sometimes play 2 games in a week, but usually it's once a week. So this is not something where it's worth having an update set for every 30 minutes or 60 minutes, because all I want it to do is to update when I open it from week to week. All of the main numbers are correct. The formatting is not generally carried over, as you can see. But that's the sort of thing I'd like you to do as you're exercise in connecting to web data. I'm going to save this one as example 10, and if you want to refer to mine, and in fact by the time you look at this that table will have changed. In fact, the English Premiership season is probably going to be over with by then, so it'll be interesting to see how that comes out when you open it on your computer in your country. Okay, that's it on connecting to web data. I'll see you in the next section.